What does it mean that the election was stolen from Donald Trump in 2020? Well, in the early days following the election where Donald Trump lost to Joe Biden, many people said that it was fraud. There were wild conspiracy theories about servers in Germany or whatever, CIA shootouts, Dominion, Venezuela, China. Fake ballots were being printed and sent in. That was a very dominant narrative. A lot of people were posting these wild theories that Trump was secretly going to be reinstated as president in March, the true election day, and a bunch of other things that never happened. Now, since the beginning, I have said Joe Biden won, and there's one simple reason to say that, and that is he's in the White House. He won. Thank you. Have a nice day. But we have new information coming out. It's a Rasmussen poll that finds 1 in 5 mail-in voters admit they cheated in the 2020 election. Whoa! 1 in 5. Holy crap. Now, the real question here is how many votes were by mail? Then, if we take 20% of that number, we can make some extrapolation, and then we can even be very favorable and remove the margin of error from this survey. I mean, we could actually be favorable to ourselves and increase the margin of error because it can go either direction, about 3 points. The point here is Rasmussen reached out to over 1,000 voters, asked them about certain practices, which would be voter fraud. And surprisingly, they found about 1 in 5 admitted that in some way they did commit fraud. How? Signing ballots for other people, filling out ballots for other people, delivering ballots for other people, things like that. And thus, this does call into question whether or not Donald Trump would have won were it a real vote based on an individual's opinions. Now, here's what I think. You got to understand what an election is, okay? If you want to have the argument to me, if you want to say, Tim, the election was stolen for Trump, stolen from Trump, I say, what's your argument? What does that mean to you? They say it was rigged. Okay, but what does that mean? They say the system was set up by Democrats and neocons to heavily favor them and to diminish the actual voters of Donald Trump. That is to say, signature verification and ballot harvesting. And I go, yes, okay, welcome to an election. Next question. That's what elections have always been. I feel like there's a lot of, you know what I think this is? A lot of Trump supporters are first-time voters. And a lot of Trump voters in 2020, I should say, were first-time voters. In 2016, the same thing. And many of them did not pay attention. Right now, Donald Trump is heavily favored in Georgia and Michigan among people who did not vote in 2020. This is giving him an advantage. For many of these people, and I don't mean to be a dick, and if you understand this, I'm not talking about you, but understand there are many people who did not realize elections ain't about convincing people to vote. It's about getting a vote. So here's what I see. A lot of people don't believe that Trump could have lost. Why? The narrative was on his side tremendously. Yet somehow Biden gets 81 million votes, more than any president ever. Well, there was also a counter narrative against Donald Trump. But more importantly, Democrats and allies in the Republican Party, neocons, teamed up to change policy and procedure to benefit Joe Biden in the election. That's just it. And mail-in voting was one of these components. Now, this is a survey. This is not physical evidence, but I do believe it gives credence to the argument that people were defrauding the system through mail-in voting. I shouldn't say coordinated, but there was a coordinated effort to get universal mail-in voting into the hands of as many people as possible. That's a fact. And then people just did what they wanted to do. Now, here's what I said. You want to know why Joe Biden won? Because mom walks in and she goes to her 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid, son and daughter, and she goes, okay, we're going to go to Olive Garden and get the endless breadsticks, but you got to fill out your ballots first. And the kids are like, Mom, I don't care about voting. It's so dumb. No, you're going to fill out your ballots. And then the kids are like, fine, what am I doing? And mom goes, you put Joe Biden, now you sign it. That is, in my opinion, the likely reason that Joe Biden was able to secure so many votes. But now it appears, and I think many people were inclined to believe this as it was, that many of these parents were filling out the ballots for their kids. And in fact, we even heard this from one of the individuals on The View who said that they filled out a ballot for their kid, admitting to committing voter fraud. Welcome to our brave new world. Ladies and gentlemen, a new trailer has come out about a movie called Civil War. Predictive programming, some might say, or it's just in the air. The fear is here. You got a major blockbuster film coming out depicting a United States Civil War. I wonder why that would be, but by all means, Tim Pool has said the magic words, so you may take a drink. Before we get started and break down all the math, because this is going to blow your mind, and I hope you share this with friends and family, because I'm not here to say that, China, Dominion, fraud, Venezuela. I'm here to just point out the polls and talk to you about math. And then you can decide for yourself what you think any of it means. These are institutions that produce polling. These are news organizations. I'm going to show you some data. You decide. Before we get started, my friends, I got big news. Head over to thebestsongever.com. Click pre-order on Amazon. Buy Together Again right now for 69 cents. You can also pre-order on iTunes. It's a bit harder to do. But we are hoping that our new song, it's the best song ever written. You know why I can say that? I didn't write it. It was written by Smokey Mike and the God King, and the trailer has just dropped. That's right, over at Timcast Music, just a few hours before I recorded this video, the Smokey Mike and the God King cover, our cover of Smokey Mike and the God Kings Together Again, is up now. It's a 30-second promo clip, and you can see we got Jeremy Boring and Michael Knowles. Oh, that's a cameo. And there's a little snippet of the song at the end. Pre-order now, and I'll tell you what this is all about. Jeremy Boring and Michael Knowles gave a big FU to the music industry with a spoofed song called Together Again. It's a long story, but they basically tried to buy the rights to perform a song. They were told no, and they offered 100 times the market rate, and they were told no. Why? I'm willing to bet it was political. We put out a song, and we had a publicist reach out to news organizations, entertainment outlets saying Tim Pool and Pete Parada, formerly of The Offspring, have teamed up, and we actually got people responding saying, F you and go F yourselves. Okay. This song that we're putting out is a double F you to the music industry. I hope you like it. And I hope that the song will chart on Billboard, and then we can laugh at our success at mocking the woke institutions. But anyway, I digress. I'm sure all the family members who shared this video with are like, what is he talking about with this song? But it's up at Timcast Music, thebestsongever.com. Let me show you this from Rasmussen first. They say, more than 20% of voters who used mail-in ballots in 2020 admit they participated in at least one form of election fraud. A new national telephone and online survey by Rasmussen reports, and the Heartland Institute finds that 21% of likely U.S. voters who voted by absentee or mail-in ballot in the 2020 election say they filled out a ballot in part or in full on behalf of a friend, family member, spouse, or child. 78% say they didn't. 30% of those surveyed said they voted by absentee or mail-in ballot in the 2020 election. 19% who cast 19% of those who cast mail-in votes say a friend or family member filled out their ballot in part or in full or their behalf. Furthermore, 70% of mail-in voters say that in the 2020 election they cast a ballot in a state where they were no longer a permanent resident. All of these practices are illegal, Heartland Institute officials noted. They go on to mention that the sampling error is plus or minus 3% with 95% level of confidence. Field work for all Rasmussen Report surveys is conducted by Pulse Opinion Research, LLC, and you can see their actual methodology. Now, I know. People will often try and deflect, and they'll say, these polls don't mean anything. All right. First, from the Council on Foreign Relations, everyone's favorite organization. They say the pandemic helped popularize early voting and mail-in ballots. Americans cast 101 million early votes, 64.1% of the total votes. The total number of mail-in ballots was 65,642,049. Now that seems to line up with the total number of votes cast and the percentage of people who voted. So let's do this. Voted by mail, sorry. Okay, let's see, where are we at? This is CFR's 2020 election by numbers. They say that Biden won 0.2 million votes, 51%. Trump won 74. That means we have roughly 155 million between the two, and likely, because, this doesn't add up to 100%, we're looking at around, what say you, 160, 170 million votes. Now, hold on there a minute. If that's the case, fact, 170 or so, 160 million votes, and it is a fact that 65 million of these votes came through mail-in voting. Stands to reason that just north of 1/3 of all votes that came through were mail-in votes. Now, okay, what does Rasmussen say? And they polled these individuals. They found 30% of those surveyed say they voted by absentee or mail-in ballot. Now, that doesn't line up perfect. Actually, that probably does line up fairly well. If we're looking at 65 million, no. That would be more than 30%. Yeah, that would be close to like 38 or 39. So there is a decent miss here in terms of the people they've asked. Less so. So they interviewed people, they surveyed people, and found in their margin slightly less of the people they asked. So there's not a one-for-one based on the national sample. So you'll have to extrapolate that and make your determination. If this 30% is nationally representative of voters, or is it, representing the national voter bloc, and 1 in 5 individuals say they committed fraud, we are talking about around 14 million or 13 or 14 million votes that may be fraudulent. I mean, if we go by the hard numbers, quite literally. Now, let's say there's a 3-point margin of error. Because the margin of error could go north or south, I think it's pointless to actually try and give the data, but we could be saying something along the lines of 12 to 15 million votes based on I guess technically more than that. Because, that's probably a fair estimate. I mean, look, we're dealing with large numbers. It doesn't matter. Trump did not lose by that many votes. And even if you give the benefit of the doubt and subtract 3% for the margin of error, we're still looking at an election where Trump would have actually gotten more votes than Joe Biden were it not for mail-in voting fraud. But I will stress, the survey by Rasmussen is not proof that fraud was committed. It's a survey of people claiming they did. Maybe many of these people lied. Why would they admit to committing fraud? I mean, that lady on The View did. That was pretty wild, if you ask me. It's hard to know for sure. Following this, Rasmussen was slammed by a denial of service attack. Very interesting timing. They say, while we remediate our apparent denial of service attack, here for our readers on X is a message from today's 2020 mail-in voting survey sponsor. Please share. And you know what? I'll just go ahead and click that repost right there for you guys. This is yesterday. This news breaks. I'm surprised this story wasn't larger. Now, there's more data to consider. Rasmussen is considered a highly credible agency when it comes to polling, and their methodology is considered to be fairly standard, but fairly accurate. As of right now, according to the Real Clear Politics average, Rasmussen has Joe Biden beating Donald Trump by 4 points. Now, that seems to be an outlier. It seems to be an outlier because all the other polls, save NPR and PBS, have Trump winning. YouGov has a tie. But Trump is currently enjoying a polling average spread of plus 2.3, meaning Donald Trump be winning. At this time in the previous election cycle, Biden was up 7.5 in aggregate, and Clinton in the previous cycle to that was up 4.3 in aggregate, implying Donald Trump is dancing his way to a 2024 reelection. And the important thing to consider here when it comes to this vote, the voting patterns and universal mail-in voting is it's not breaking them down by state. The only thing that really matters, of course, is the swing states. And Donald Trump lost by 44,000 votes in 2020. If we're talking about people voting by mail and committing fraud to the tunes of millions, it doesn't give us a whole lot of information because a lot of this may be California, New York, or Illinois. Meaningless. But if we were then to extrapolate the same data statewide, we'd still find a 1 in 5 margin of people admitting they committed voter fraud. In which case, 1 in 5 votes? Yeah, I'm going to have to tell you that means Donald Trump wins. Because I think the split by some states was like if Trump won even 3 points in some of these swing states, he won those states. Again, this is not proof that Donald Trump won. This is simply an interesting survey suggesting that there are a lot of people who committed fraud and got away with it. How do you investigate these claims? Well, again, you had a lady on The View outright admit to committing fraud. Let me make sure I get her name right, because this one's big. Let's see what we got here. Oh, I love this. Reuters says, here we go. All right, I thought it was Sunny Hostin. Let's pull this up because we want to make sure we get all the facts right. Here's Reuters. The View co-host Sunny Hostin did not admit committing voter fraud. Really? Let's read. Social media users are misrepresenting ABC talk show host The View, Sunny Hostin's remarks on her experience with dropping off her son's absentee ballot for the U.S. midterm elections. They say she admitted committing voter fraud, but Representative for Hostin denied the allegations. Laws in New York, where they live, allow for designated family members to legally drop off other people's ballots. And a Facebook video said, did Sunny Hostin admit to committing voter fraud on behalf of her son? In the clip taken from the popular show, Hostin said she had trouble actually voting for her son absentee ballot today, and that made me very concerned. She went on to explain her experience with a poll worker who asked her to place the absentee ballot in a bag on the floor and had to ask if there was an official election box that clearly says absentee ballots or something like that. The clip appears to be from a November 8th episode of The View. Users online are taking her quote of voting for her son to mean she fraudulently filled out a ballot and cast it on his behalf. But a rep for Hostin told Reuters there was no illegal activity. Sunny and her son abided by the law. She was the designated person he assigned to drop off her ballot. The rep also confirmed her resident in Westchester County, New York. In New York, individuals can vote by mail with a valid excuse, which includes being blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's weird. Well, hold on. In Westchester County specifically, a designated person can pick up or deliver a ballot based on their behalf. The voter must designate that person on their ballot application. Okay, well, I'm confused here, Reuters. How did Sunny Hostin's son fill out the absentee ballot while not currently in the state, resulting in Sunny Hostin having the physical ballot to go drop off? Are you saying that her son received an absentee ballot where he was? I think was he in Pennsylvania or something? So he's out of state. He receives an absentee ballot. He then drives there to fill it out, and then you dropped it off? Because is that what happened? Or did he receive it, fill it out, and mail it to you? You see why people are saying that she committed fraud? But you know what? Fine. I don't know exactly what she did. But the assumption here is she received the mail-in vote. She voted for her son and tried to drop it off. Voting for her son. Sure. But this is the point. Many people are admitting to having done something like that. Maybe she didn't do exactly that. Who knows? Fine, whatever. But then we're dealing with, I hate to say it, voter fraud. Now, how do you get an investigation on something like that? I don't know. But I want to make sure I give you more facts. I have this article from Scientific American from March 15th, 2004. How can a poll of only 1,004 Americans represent 260 million people with only a 3% margin of error? Andrew Gelman, a professor in the departments of statistics and political science at Columbia University, explains. A 3% margin of error means that there's a 95% chance that the survey result will be within 3% of the population value. To put it another way, you would expect to see less than a 3% difference. This we understand, blah, blah, blah. The point here is it's quite simple. This is Scientific American basically saying, yes, a poll of 1,000 Americans can represent the entire country. There are a lot of people who don't seem to understand this. Ian Crossland on Timcast IRL, no matter how many times you say it, his brain can't comprehend the concept of a Sudoku puzzle. But I'll break it down for you. You ever play Sudoku? You probably did. You got a grid. It's 3 by 3 by 3. And you're looking at a bunch of empty spaces. There are a few numbers in there. Every line has to have 1 through 9, and every box has to have 1 through 9. This is effectively how these polling systems work. You take a look at the data, and then you infer the empty spaces. The polls here, quite simple. You are given a Sudoku puzzle. You are given maybe like 10 numbers in the whole block. Maybe it's hard. And you can say, based on these numbers, I can accurately predict where every number will be. 100% accuracy. There are some Sudoku puzzles that are really great where it's like there's only a couple numbers and you're like, wow, tough. I guess they have these blank ones or whatever. You can just fill it out yourself, I guess. The point is this. The starting numbers of Sudoku are equivalent to the data in a poll. It doesn't show you everything guaranteed. You don't know exactly where the numbers are, but you can easily figure out what those numbers are going to be based on the data you have. When we survey 1,000 Americans in a representative sample of this country, we target key areas where we can see big numbers. An election happens. We can say Heartland voters did this, Southern voters did this, Western voters did this. In these regions, we see these patterns. You can then survey a family or two in each area, talking to only 1,000 people in the whole country, and find a scientifically accurate representation of voting patterns in this country. There is a margin of error. Thus, my point here is quite simple. This is tremendous data that Rasmussen has put out. It warrants further investigation, especially as we're heading into another election cycle. But you know what? This is why the most important thing any of you can do is vote. Now, of course, there's no COVID this time around. Maybe there'll be something. And thus, mail-in voting will be less prominent, but still powerful. And there are a lot of people who will likely try to play dirty. If this polling is correct, I think this warrants some kind of task force to prevent voter fraud. Not that we've proven anybody has committed voter fraud, but we've proven that there are a large number of people who express the desire to commit voter fraud. Well, that being the case, I think we should probably say, okay, well, how do we prevent that in the event it does happen? Because if we're not looking for it, tracking for it, or preventing it, it will happen. Imagine one day you woke up and your cash register was empty, but you didn't lock your doors and you have no security cameras. Well, what do you expect was going to happen? And then you go, I don't know, money's gone. I guess we'll have to figure it out later. Or you can investigate and try and figure out what happened. The issue here is the store clerk walks in, the money's gone, and goes, I guess Joe Biden must have come and pick up the money. Okay, I guess. Or in this instance, is Donald Trump did. And then Trump goes, I never got paid. And he goes, yes, you did. The money's gone. No, you got to investigate this stuff. It's going to be interesting. I tell you that. I don't believe Democrats will ever allow for any kind of task force or investigation. Swing states are the real battleground. But as I was saying, go vote. You know why? Let's say you've got a 20% disadvantage because these in the mail-in voting, meaning you need to overcome like 10 million votes that are going to be fraudulent. Well, if you're not going to get a task force and you really do want to win, then what you need to do is, one, prepare for lawfare, lawsuits and investigations into mail-in voting using this data as well as evidence from 2020. Step two, you must register everyone you know to vote, or get them to register, I should say more accurately, and get them to vote. Make sure the margin is crushed. With Donald Trump's victory in these swing states, it was only 44,000 votes. Only 44,000. If everyone who listened to this got 2 or 3 of their friends to register to vote and to vote, Trump cannot lose, especially with the current sentiments in this country. I hope y'all are paying attention to what's going on. It's crazy stuff. It is crazy stuff. It's not the evidence of voter fraud people have been claiming, and that's kind of my point. Ballot harvesting and universal mail-in voting, as I've said, is what got Joe Biden the victory. And I maintain it. Now, this is not evidence fraud happened. It's a suggestion that people are willing to do it. And for that, I believe this warrants investigation. So we shall see. Next segment is coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.